If I may yield to the gentleman from Edmondson 19 to speak on that matter, please, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Edmondson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I rise to speak about that, I also want to bring recognition to the work that went into the proposal that you see today before you. This is not something that was done in a vacuum. This is not something that was done in a silo. This is not something that's been rushed and hurried over a week or two. I have been meeting with the gentleman from Todd and the gentleman from LaRue and staff for months, pretty much ever since we left here last year, because they wanted to ensure that whatever was done on a state tax reform package, tax modernization package, could go hand in hand and complement whatever we were looking at doing on the local level with the constitutional amendment that this body passed last week and with what will happen in the future once that constitutional amendment is passed by the voters of this state. And I have to tell you, I commend them for their work, but I look back in the back of the room and I see two people who need a lot of recognition. And that's Frank Willie and Jennifer Hayes. If you've never sat down in meetings over and over, month by month, with the two of them, the institutional knowledge that they have of the tax structure of this state, other states, and the potential pitfalls that we could fall into, it's an amazing level of knowledge. And we couldn't have more professional, more knowledgeable people working on a proposal like this than the two of them, and I want to commend them both for the work that they've done over the last 6-8 months. So thank you all for that. I even, through the work of the task force that I chaired over the summer, had an obscure tax issue, local tax issue question that I brought to Jennifer. And when I did, within the afternoon, I had a full historical 6 or 7 page document from the 1930s to today of the whole history of what that tax looked like when it started and how it's ended. And so, again, I commend you all for that work. But this does interplay with the local work that we're doing. I think you see in the proposal in House Bill 8 that you see before you a proposal very similar to what will come after the constitutional amendment is passed. An idea of transitioning us from a state that is so focused on taxing the income of our workers to trying to move to a consumption-based tax that can grow consistently our population. And I said this last week when we talked about the amendment, but I'll say it again. I live very close to the Tennessee state line, and that state line runs many, many miles along our border. And it truly is a tale of two states over the last 3 or 4 decades. In 1980, our states had roughly the same population. Our states' economies were roughly the same size. And both Kentucky and Tennessee had 7 congressional districts. In the impending years since then, we've seen our state, as the gentleman from Todd said, stay stagnant. And when you're staying stagnant, you're falling behind. And that is demonstrated by our representation at the federal level. We now have lost one of those congressmen, and we're down to 6 in Kentucky since that time period that we started talking about. Tennessee now has 9 and has gained 2 in that process. A net of 3 when you look at what's happened between the 2 states. The gentlemen from Christian on this floor know well what's happened in their communities. Clarksville, Tennessee, and Hopkinsville, Kentucky were both about 25,000 people in 1970. Today, Clarksville, Tennessee has 130,000 people and would be the 3rd largest city in the Commonwealth of Kentucky if it were within the borders of our state. Hopkinsville has 35,000 people, and their mirror border communities and Fort Campbell's Army Base straddles both of our state lines and those 2 communities. But people choose to live in Tennessee because they have a tax code that promotes that growth and that population growth. And I just want to further say, and the gentleman from Todd has already reiterated this, but I want to reiterate it again. This is not a corporate tax break. There's nothing done on the corporate tax in this bill. And if you look at the base expansions, the broadening of the sales tax base, these are by and large luxury type services or goods that we're extending this to. This is not some corporate tax break, no matter what anybody tries to tell you. And I want to say one more thing as we talk about the local piece of this, and that is the piece that the gentleman from Todd mentioned with the transient room tax, with Airbnb and VRBO, and other platforms similar to them. I think there are a couple others in the market right now, but those are the most well known. That tax is already due at the local level. And many times, the people who own those properties are paying those taxes to their local transient room tax through the local governments and their local tourism agencies. But the local tourism agencies are having to go out and find all those individually and know who they are, individual properties. Whereas your platforms like Airbnb and VRBO have generally signed documents, agreements with places like Louisville, Lexington, and other large markets so that they don't have to go out, the people that have the most resources for tourism don't have to go out and search for that revenue. They don't have to go search for those owners. But our smallest communities like where I come from in Brownsville and Edmonson County, have to go out and actually reach out and find the individual property and the individual property owner to be able to get the tax that they're owed. It benefits the state none at all, but it'll benefit your local small tourism agencies tremendously. And so this is a good proposal, folks. This is a proposal that moves us forward into the future and gives us an opportunity to grow Kentucky in a way that we know we must grow so that we can have the workforce and we can have the revenue in the future to grow and have the services needed to continue attracting both businesses and people to this state. Now I yield back to the gentleman from Todd.